When we were traveling along the Konkan coast of Maharashtra, we went to a small village called Korlai and we found an abandoned 400 years old Portuguese church. And we saw this. So basically this is the coat of arms of the Portuguese Empire when Portugal used to have a big empire. This makes me think about why do we have so many Portuguese words in our language? The Portuguese word chave came to Marathi and became chavi, meaning a key. Ironically, another Portuguese word, tronco, also came to Marathi and became turunga, meaning prison. Interesting, isn't it? The word for prison and the word for key both come from Portuguese. There are many more. For example, the word faltar in Portuguese meaning missing came to Marathi and became paltu. Well, the meaning changed. Faltu in Marathi means something which is absolutely rubbish. Well, similarly, there's another verb in Portuguese called jugar, meaning to play. But it came to Marathi and became zugar, meaning gambling. In Portuguese called prato, meaning a small plate. But in Marathi, it became parat. So basically, parat is a plate in which you knead your dough. You don't eat in that plate. For example, this is a parat. You don't eat in this. And of course, our very own batata comes from Portuguese. Well, talking about food after batata, the word for sweet lime, that is Mosambi, actually comes from Mozambique. I mean, the country of Mozambique, which used to be a Portuguese colony. Well, we can apply the similar logic to the word Peru. The Spanish verb esticar, meaning to stretch, in Marathi it is istri, to iron the clothes. But why do we have so many Portuguese words in Marathi? Well, Portuguese were actually successful in conquering certain parts of Maharashtra and of course primarily Goa. There was an interaction between the Portuguese of Goa and of course the Maratha Empire. Chhatrapati Shivaji, who is also considered the father of Indian Navy, actually wanted to establish his own navy. So, the word for navy in Marathi comes from, you guessed it, Portuguese. It is the word armar, which comes from Portuguese armada. Similarly, there's another word in Marathi called galbat. Galbat is a warship, which also comes from Portuguese because the Portuguese were the people who actually taught the Marathas in terms of how to build the navy, how to maintain the navy. Also, there were some Portuguese individuals who worked for the Maratha Empire as mercenaries. In this particular image, you can actually see these huge Maratha ships called galbats attacking a British East India Company ship called Aurora. This book is actually a collection of interesting exchanges between the Portuguese and the Maratha Empire. For example, in this letter, the Portuguese governor is actually threatening the Marathas for capturing some of their cargoes, and he's actually writing, please don't teach the Portuguese how to treat their enemies. We know how to do this. And in another letter, the Portuguese king is actually telling the Marathas how they were defeated by the Mughals, right? Also, can you spot the word Chhatrapati written in Portuguese over here? Well, this strange exchange between the Marathi language and Portuguese makes us wonder as we start excavating our language. And we look at the words as artifacts, as broken statues, as broken pieces of pottery. They speak to us. They speak to us of a long forgotten era, an era of brutal colonial oppression, but also an era of exchanges of ideas and words.